unmute. So now we are unmuted. And then that's it. But like I was saying, as we'll let people trickle in, looks like some people are already following on Facebook. But like I was saying, you know, there's like these different APIs and different softwares, or not software, but like scripts and code that have already been designed by really intelligent people. And so it's kind of weird to kind of just like have this like idea of like building from complete scratch. And there's a lot of value in that, right? To really like as a way, as a tool to understand like the underneath the hood, you know what I mean? But it's not necessarily a smart strategy to kind of like just do that as a practical means to an end. For instance, like I use Photoshop. I didn't have to like design Photoshop, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you didn't have to code your own
program. Absolutely. And like I use 3D code. I didn't have to like code 3D code. But what's really cool is that like as I'm learning these tools and stuff, like I'm learning like kind of the value of how these tools are even created in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh man, the little baby. He's having a hard time. Yeah, this is why I couldn't stream yesterday either, because he was a rant. So give me 1 second. Let me try to see if I can.
Okay.
Just a second. No.
How are the people doing?
Oh, there you go.
And we got a question on the Facebook. Interesting question.
All right, hold on. Okay, yeah. I'm just gonna start going. What were you saying?
And Andres, well, I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry, but he said, "Talk about your new class at Brainstorm."
Oh yeah. I'm gonna start teaching with those guys. So I'm a big fan of their platform, and I've talked to them on multiple occasions, saying I want to support what they do, because they do some great stuff. And so me, James, and John Park have been just talking over time, and so yeah, we just set it up, and they said they needed help with some like creature design stuff. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And so I like the in-person like studio like teaching environment a lot, and I haven't done it in a while, so I thought it'd be really cool to kind of get back into it and then do it through them, because I did it before, but it was underneath my own parameters, and the issue behind that was that there's like a lot of managerial things that I've discovered that I'm probably just not the best at, or nor do I care for it as much as it seems like I should, and so like it's kind of nice for them to kind of manage a lot of that, and I just kind of just do what I like to do, which is teach. You know what I mean? And so yeah, it's going to be set up. We're working on like what the curriculum can be and how we can make it the best for anyone who decides to be a part of it. But yeah, I'll still have like my own courses and all that stuff online for those who have no access to this type of things. But for the rest, yeah, there's an alternative opportunity there.
New opportunities.
Yeah. So check this out.
Hold on, real quick. For all of you watching on all of the different platforms, you guys should go over to robotpencil.net/streamchat. You're most likely to have your questions answered there.
Yeah.
The only chat that I'm actually looking at is the Facebook chat right now. So,
yeah, and you suggested to me that I should actually I'm just going to keep this as it is. You suggested to me that I should have it on my banner, and so I do.
I see it.
Yeah, I listened.
Proud of you.
So I'm going to be talking about a few things. I'm not going to be on here for too long, but it's going to the point of what I was trying to mention before, of like trying to stay consistent and try to do this often, But the reality is, like, I got a baby, and you can probably hear him in the background. And I'm really helpful to my wife. I do a lot of helping out. I help hold them and walk around with them. But at the same time, I told my wife, like, I need to do this. It's important, So she's trying right now to manage. He's going crazy. She's not.
Well, you can't get mad at a baby.
I'm sorry, say it again, sir?
We're doing parenting together.
Oh yeah, we do parenting together. Yeah, we're we're really good with supporting each other and stuff like that. So she's really good about like giving me time to do what I need to do, you know. But like the issue might be is that I have my office is in my is in my bedroom, and our bedroom is also our nursery, you know. So it's like we multi-purpose our like rooms. But you know, like I used to have a studio and all that fancy stuff, but I got rid of all that stuff because I prefer actually being home and close to my family, you know. And like I even wrote like this long post about failure just recently. I'm sure you read it. And the point of it was to kind of bring to light, like, you know, a lot of people might not think that these really highly successful people make tremendous mistakes or terrible mistakes, or have a lot of terrible things happen to them. Like it's much easier, or like people might feel that their problems are unique to them, if that makes sense, you know. But as you know me pretty well, and you've taken classes with me before, and you've heard me explain and talk to other students and try to get them past these types of hurdles. Yeah, it's very clear to me that I think a lot of people don't know enough about this type of stuff, right? Like there's not enough other like really accomplished artists or people who've done pretty well going out there and explaining to people that they got it pretty rough too, you know.
Yeah.
So this kind of like all evolved. It sparked from like just talking with my students and just kind of continuously and consistently seeing this issue come up and again and again. And I find myself doing a lot of, you know, helping them out, can consult them to understand that, look, you know, I hear your thing and I empathize with your issues, you know. But don't be confused. Like this is like not unique. Like everybody has their thing. Everybody, you know. And so that was like floating in my brain. And then what also floating in my brain, I saw like a video of Elon Musk, like his struggles. Like apparently he went through like a bunch of like drama with like Tesla and like the market crash, and like the people that like he admired, like the people that he loved in space, like that were part of the space programs, were like talking trash about him and what he was trying to do.
That's rough.
Yeah, so imagine like if I was like genuinely making fun of you for like your YouTube videos that you're doing,
exactly.
And you're just like, what? Like I thought Age and I were tight, you know? And I'm like, my jealousy and my insecurities like sit in, and I'm like, Mike trying to do YouTube, it's not a thing. No, it's just you know, that's kind of sucky and that's messed up, and so like I saw that, and I like 2 days ago, or not 2 days ago, like yesterday I think, I saw PewDiePie like have like a whole video about like him going through some stuff and making these like, and this is, you know, PewDiePie, right? And I've been consistently paying attention to this, and I saw an interview between Philip DeFranco and Casey Neistat.
Casey Neistat, I saw that.
And again, I'm just like, I'm looking at what Casey is saying, and I'm like, I get what this guy's going through, man, right? Like I understand exactly what he's trying to get at, you know. I'm not sure if I'm entirely. I don't know where he's going to end up, right? Because there's a very clear line where people will turn to the dark side, you know. Where there's this thing that I read where it's called lifestyle upgrade, where people upgrade their lifestyles as they make more income and more wealth. And this is something definitely I fell victim to early on in my career, right? But the reality is that it's sometimes unsustainable, right? Especially if you built platforms around stuff like what, like, you know, Casey and PewDiePie did, right? Like PewDiePie pretty much just played video games, and so as he's trying to expand his quote unquote business, right? Like, what does that mean, you know? And it kind of put him in a lot of positions that kind of upset him or depressed him more than it encouraged him and excited him. And you're starting to see that more and more happen. And so if you look at someone like Philip DeFranco, like what's great about him is that he went to the good side. Like you can tell he went through some stuff, but it was enough that it didn't allow him to be corrupt, if that makes sense, right? Like he went through enough trauma, if that makes sense, that inspired him to know that this is a very, very fickle line. There's videos, if you go back in time and watch, you'll see there's some videos of him doing the same thing, and this is a continuous thing. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's like it's very unique to this generation that this is happening. And what I mean is that more people are revealing that success isn't as much as it's cracked out to be. Okay, like there was a time where that wasn't true, where you would not know. You just see these people on magazines. They look freaking fantastic. They look like they have fantastic lives, right? You have no clue. You know, you just assume that everything's amazing. In fact, after that post that I did, right, I got several posts from really prominent artists, and they were talking to me about that same thing. They were just like, you know, they're
Sympathizing?
yeah, they're sympathizing, but and more importantly, some of them were like explaining like their situation and how it's like really frustrating for them, you know, and and these people are really accomplished. These are really good artists, really good people, you know, and they were kind of like saying, you know, it was nice to kind of see that, you know, that they weren't alone, right? And I'm like, yeah, I've met too many people and I've talked to too many people to know better, right? I've actually encountered quite a few people who have come to me because we connected either through, you know, uh, like events, or like sometimes we chat online, you know. And so I've just met and talked to too many people, and I've started to come to this realization that people need to kind of start to understand that this is a thing, you know, like there is like a resurgence of information, of letting people people are starting to get a little bit more people are starting to get a little bit more alert to these types of issues that can happen, you know. And yeah, you look at something like Casey Neistat, is how you say his last name? I don't know.
Yeah.
Say it.
Neistat?
Neistat. Neistat.
Neistat.
Yeah.
I want to be more Russian with it.
Yeah, and so you see stuff like this happening with other like really big famous celebrities or YouTube stars. I remember I had one student once like almost had like a nervous breakdown when she found out like Brad and Angelina Jolie were having a divorce, you know. And I'm just like, well, that happens, man. And they're like, yeah, but they looked so happy. I was like, yeah, but that's this on the surface. You're starting to see people who are starting to call out like Instagram models who make it look like they have these amazing lives, but they really don't, you know. Even like super epic celebrities like Beyonce and Jay-Z are not immune to this, right? You see a lot of that. Apparently, like Jay-Z just dropped a new song, an album that's really like hits hard, you know. I haven't heard it, so I can't really objectively comment on what that means, you know.
I think it talks about his infidelity.
Talks about a lot of things.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is starting to become a thing, like where people are starting to kind of open up a bit more and reveal like the the behind the scenes a little bit more. And I think that's great. It's really informative. Okay, and it's gonna prevent stuff like kids shooting each other with like a freaking Desert Eagle, you know, like with a book between them. You know that that kid shot himself, right? Because they, you know, because they want that fame, they want that success, and they think this is what's going to do it, and then they end up doing something completely and entirely naive. You know,
so tragic.
Yeah, it's not like I see a lot of people get really easily like, you know, wow, these stupid is, stupid does type of thing, and it's like, well, you know, it's not that simple, man. You know, like these people probably really struggling, man, and they had some real problems going on, and they were just trying to find a way out, and they see all these other people make tremendous amounts of success from doing really stupid things, and so we could do the same, you know. And that stupid thing ended up costing the person's life and someone else's life in terms of jail time, and then also the people that are involved are now affected, like their kids. So now they lost both their parents.
All their neighbors watching as well.
Yeah, so it's like it's a turning point that I think is starting to be very clear and more. I think it's a positive thing that's happening. Like, not to say that death was a positive occurrence. I'm just saying more awareness is coming to this idea of like what is truly the value in success if you really lose yourself in a lot of stuff. You know, you see movies about it, right? But people always just think, well, that's just a movie, right? So like this new phenomenon is a little bit different because of social media, literally connects you with some of these mega stars, right? These mega celebrities, the people that are a huge deal, right? And or at least people that are important to you. And so you can start to see the inner workings a bit more, and then that wisdom is going to be spread to the younger generation, like people like my children. They're going to grow up knowing that this type of stuff exists, right? Where maybe my generation and probably even yours, Mike, is like are new to it. You know, like this idea that what really truly defines success. You know, and you know, there's always been signs, right? Like you look at Biggie Smalls, like more money, more problems, right?
Yeah.
If you look at like even like the careers of Eminem and other like really cool, like amazing rappers that have a really good insight on philosophy, and they put it in their words and into their trade.
We were just talking about Jay-Z. I mean,
Yeah.
the song he put out called "The Story of OJ," with the video to it.
Uh-huh.
There's a line where he pretty much says something along the lines of, "You know what's better than throwing bands at a stripper? Credit."
What did he say?
In that, he said something along the lines of, "You know what's better than throwing bands at a stripper?
Uh-huh.
Is credit."
Uh,
Yeah, I thought that line was like simple but super hard at the same time. 'Cause it's so true.
yeah,
He
yeah.
was pretty much like telling you, like, you know, you're holding money phones to your ear, you know, and that's not real success. Like, you got to invest and do all, you know.
Yeah.
There was some
cool.
more.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to it
I
and
don't know
watch
how
it.
PG your stream is.
Oh yeah, it's
Anyway,
pretty
yeah,
PG.
listen.
Yeah, man.
Listen.
So this paradigm shift happened to me, and I've always mentioned this on occasion. You know, that he is real frustrated. Here, let me see if I can hold him, calm him down for a little bit. Let's see if I can calm him down. Yeah, I can tell my wife's getting a little frustrated. Aww, you're a little baby. You're a little baby. You're a little baby. You're a baby.
Oh,
You're a little
shit.
baby.
That's like a magic
Baby.
touch right there.
No, I'll give him a second. He'll freak out again. I try to do this until he doesn't freak out. You're a little baby. You're a baby. Yeah, I think it's my voice.
I think so too. I think so too. You have a very
Yeah,
soothing
you don't
voice.
have that lavender voice, Cedar. Did he poop? I can't hear. Did he just poop? Did you guys hear him poop? Did you hear him?
No.
No?
No.
Then nobody else heard him poop.
Do you smell anything funny?
No, my wife's gonna smell his butt right now. He might have farted.
I heard something.
He does make noises with just his mouth.
No.
He didn't poop. You're a little baby.
Wendu
try.
asked, "Why isn't John modding on Discord?"
Yeah,
John
I'm
is out with his
Yeah,
family.
that's me. That's me.
Oh. Whoops. I haven't looked over. Sorry.
What's going on, Mike?
Hey, I could actually take this opportunity since I'm holding my child to answer some questions, since I can't necessarily paint. For anyone who's
Yeah, cool.
just joining and they think the screen is frozen, it's not frozen. I'm just holding a baby.
We got two.
Yeah, sure. Let me try to answer these questions while I'm
All right.
holding my child. He's real woke right now. You woke? You woke, little baby? Yeah, you woke. What was one of the questions?
Okay, so Caesar asked, "Hi Anthony, just wanted to ask you about the change on your diet that you made
Sure.
to make it more green. Can you give some tips? Thanks for your stream."
Yeah, absolutely. So, me and my family pretty much converted to veganism. That's like the name for it, right? Because that's what it is. We just completely evaporate all animal products. But we're pretty. I know, like my wife and my kids are pretty lenient from time to time, and we're not super like on the political stance of it. We're not so much doing it for that reason. We're doing mostly for health, right? I think most people understand that who have followed my streams, and there's a lot of obvious ethical reasons why it's pretty powerful. But on the top of all that, like what I did was very simple. I just started. The first thing I did was just get rid of. I was like, if I can avoid it, I'll avoid it, right? It wasn't so much like I'll just completely just go cold turkey and just get rid of it. I just started small. I said, okay, wherever I go, like if I'm at a restaurant with my friends, like is there an option that doesn't have like all this stuff in it? And so I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And that's what I did. I did that for like the first month or so. but like really the first week I did it, I kind of was like, I think I can kind of get rid of it entirely. I mean, I live in Southern California. I live in Irvine. You know, I live in a very privileged community, so there's access to like, you know, all sorts of vegan options, if that makes sense. So it wasn't too difficult to kind of just like switch over. Plus, there's like, you know, like Chipotle where you can just get rice and beans and everything except for just don't get cheese, sour cream, or the meat, right? And so I just avoided all that, and then eventually I just switched over to just having no dairy, which I believe was the hardest thing. Like one of the hardest ones. Not because I like love myself cheese or milk or any of that stuff. Actually, I don't really like milk, but or I never really liked milk even before. But the cheese was like a little bit hard. But even cheese, was not a big fan of. Or I mean, it was fine. Like I used to get like double cheeseburgers. But why I stopped and why it was hard was because like lots and lots and lots of things have dairy in them. You okay, little dude? You okay? Yeah, you okay? It's actually kind of absurd how much stuff has dairy in it.
You wouldn't say.
Yeah, you'd be shocked. You know, things that would seem like they would not have anything like that, and they have it, right? So it was hard mostly because it's like everything had some sort of dairy or even eggs in it. And so that was very difficult because there's a lot of things I just liked that had it. And so getting rid of that was really hard. But all that kind of took about a few months, like 3 to 4 months probably, to finally kind of go completely over. So it just took time. So I usually tell people if they want to kind of like switch over or transition to a heavily, you know, plant-based diet, even if they don't necessarily give up every like animal product, because you know I get some people just don't want to do that, and you know it's not my place to kind of try to force people to do things, you know. But I've discovered more and more people like concede the sentiment of everybody understands that you should eat more plants, right? Like you should eat more veggies. There's no one that really argues that like veggies are bad for you. And the people that do are usually the animal product lobbyists, right? And so like, you know, like, I just try to tell people just try to just eat more, like proportionate to like 80% of your diet should be mostly of greens. That makes a lot of sense. Our bodies really run really well on that type of fuel. You know, you'll have more energy just naturally. You'll feel better. You'll poop better. And yeah, and you'll just have more of the essential vitamins that you need. And so I usually say, yeah, small steps, small bites. And then some people just, when they do it, they eventually are just kind of come to the same conclusion that I did. They're just like, I think I can just kind of turn over completely, you know? So like some of the ethical reasons that I stand by strongly is like the environmental ones, right? Because animal agriculture is like pretty heavy on our environment, you know, and it's only getting worse. And obvious animal cruelty is pretty bad. But like, you know, when before, like seeing those like videos, like were really disturbing, but I would still like be like, well, you know, it's nature, right? You know, people eating meat. But then after I transition over, it was much easier to kind of watch those videos and stop being biased, if that makes sense, right? And I was starting to be like, yeah, that is kind of sad, you know?
It's probably when you realize that you don't need that.
Yeah, and it's
you're not
like,
eating it.
Yeah, it's like that's actually pretty devastating. And when you start seeing the numbers, like 56 billion animals are like murdered a year, like you're just kind of like that. Yeah, that's kind of high. That's a lot of dead animals. And so those type of things become easier and easier to kind of be alert of. But I'm not trying to kind of preach that kind of stuff right now. My advice to you would just be take it simple, small steps. One thing that I usually give advice to is learn to cook one thing at a time, right? Don't try to learn like 17 different recipes. One thing at a time so you have your go-to stuff that you can cook whenever you're in a pinch. But rice, beans, and some spinach, like sautéed spinach, super simple, super easy to make. And this has like so much nutrition. Or potatoes, lentils, sweet potatoes, all that stuff. Anyway, any other question? For anyone who's watching, the stream is not frozen. I'm holding a baby.
Yeah, they're not crying either.
Yeah, my baby's not crying, so I'm going to keep doing this until he passes out.
Just quickly to add on to what you said, from my perspective, I actually grew up allergic to milk, so I sympathize with how hard it is to find products that are not dairy, because when I would eat dairy, it would actually give me hives. I would get sick.
Yeah, fun fact.
At this age, not the case.
Fun fact, like half of the people on this planet are lactose intolerant at some level.
But that's where I'm different. I actually wasn't lactose, so I wouldn't get like a stomach ache. I would get hives and get sick and like have a temperature.
Yeah, that's better.
That's not better.
Yeah, it's a good sign that perhaps we're not meant to be consuming this product too often.
Yeah.
If like
Well, it's
the
weird 'cause,
majority
like,
of people on this planet really can't handle their dairy.
when I turned 18, I was able to handle it. Like when I got older, but like I remember one time I had these really terrible babysitters, and
no.
this is a whole different story. Lots of bad experiences. But anyway, this one time, they didn't want me to waste food, even though they knew I was allergic to milk.
Oh, what?
So they had this glass. Yeah, they had this glass of milk, and they like made me drink it, and then I
What
ended up
the-
getting sick and having to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't do that. Like and something else happened where they ended up losing their license for childcare.
I wonder why.
Nothing sexual. But yeah, they were not very good at handling kids. Anyway.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have to be
and then,
sexual. There's like nanny cams where like nannies like beat the crap out of.
Yeah, I got hit. That was the thing.
Yeah. Like beat
Anyway.
the crap out of kids. Like that's what terrifies us. But we have a great
Yeah.
nanny. I
Gotta
can't
be
imagine. I can't imagine our nanny ever doing that to our child.
Nah. Now, regarding the diet and the food, I'm kind of in that place where I actually like a lot of these vegan style meals, but I haven't converted completely. I'm like in a transition. I
Yeah.
still eat a lot of like, plant-based foods. And I'm a little more concerned now there's a lot of these new products coming out of like these, I guess they're still processed in a way, right? Because they come in a bag. And like these black bean burgers or these black or Chipotle taco mix that's not real meat. Really good, but I'm sure it's not as good for you as like Whole Foods.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm taking a slow transition.
yeah. So the strategy is to go completely is like 80% to 90% just like straight up food. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like stuff that you kind of know where it came from. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Things that
I
have
like
like two or
oatmeal's really
yeah,
good.
like two ingredients. You know what I mean? Like oatmeal is like
Mm-hmm.
rolled oats. Like that's the only ingredient. So you're this is like oats that have been rolled. Got it.
I'll make like rice and hash browns and just toss them together.
Yeah,
just
hash browns
'cause-
is just like potato with some vegetable oil, I think.
Yeah,
And so
light on the vegetable oil though.
yeah,
Anyway, let's take this next question.
yeah.
Also,
do it.
shout out to McKenna and Marcus as they asked. Okay, Olivia said, I saw your post about being kind of bad at jobs in your early years
Oh yeah.
and lacking certain skills and discipline. What changed that? Was it more gradual, or did you have a moment in your head?
No, it's just gradual. Like even today, I still have jobs that I don't do too well on, and it's not a matter of skill or lack of skill. Like earlier on, it was just like I did whatever I could to get those jobs, and then I would get them, and then I couldn't really do them. And then over time, like in the middle of my career, it was more like I just took on way too much. Like I did like 4 or 5 different things because I didn't learn how to say no, and I just wasn't able to do it. And I like some jobs I did really well, and other jobs I just did terribly, right? And some of those jobs, because I did so bad and I was so irresponsible, like it kind of messed up their projects. And so the relationships were kind of tarnished because of that, Nothing like crazy though. It wasn't like they're like out to like get me after that. It was just, it wasn't good. It wasn't so professional, right? But other jobs I did really well. Right? I did really great, and I got like great acclaim, and I did really well. And I kicked butt. But that was only when I did like that was like the only thing, you know, when I had a lot more focus. And I just didn't pay attention to that until only the last few years. And so when I started my own studio and I was doing all that, I'm getting tired like rocking this baby. It's getting heavy. Getting my workout. Then I started to kind of pay attention to kind of this pattern that I was running into, where I would, like, I felt like success meant that you had to keep busy, if that makes sense, right? Like if you're not doing like epic stuff every day, all day, then you're really not challenging yourself. You're not really pushing the envelope. But at what cost, right? And so sometimes I would just not do good on jobs again, and sometimes I'll take on more responsibilities, and again just put me in a bad situation. So in the last year or two, I've kind of tried to fix that, right? And that's why I work from my home now. That's why I got rid of all that stuff and all these extra expenses. I got rid of like I try to simplify my workstation. I only have one monitor, you know. And then like oh, it's all right, little dude. It's all right. You're all right. You're all right. You're all right. So there's just like a lot of different things. And so I always tell people that it is gradual. There's never really like that moment that truly defines everything all at one instant. There are definitely moments, right, where you kind of will have an epiphany or a realization of all the things that have accumulated over time, right? But it's not like you mess up once or twice and then you're just like, of course, aha, right? You figured it out. It's like, it's usually, like I said, it builds and builds, and then you start building a case against yourself, if that makes sense, right? You're like, I kind of see a pattern in who I am and what I have done, and I need to kind of rectify this. All right, but you can't have that unless you have data, and sometimes that data takes years, right? Because you like to believe that you're awesome, that you're a rock star. I was watching this comedian on Netflix, and he was talking about how everybody thinks they're Denzel, you know? And he's like, you're not Denzel. You're the guy in the cash register that he talks to when he's buying the guns or something. And then you're just like, you're nobody. You're not special. And, you know, there's a lot of truth to what he's saying when he mentions that. He's like, even like me, like I'm in the pinnacle of my career. I'm on the stage right now, you know, like living my dream. But I'm just a backdrop to, let's say, the couple on the top who are having a fight and they leave my show, right? I'm just that comedian number 2 in their story, right? And I was like, wow, that's a really profound thing to say, you know? There's actually a word for that. It's called sonder, I believe, where like, for instance, Michael, you are the hero of your story, right? And I'm just a backdrop character. I'm just a background character to your story, right? And vice versa. The guy that you cut off, or the guy that cut you off in the street that one day, you know, you happen to be extra number 2 in his life story or her life story.
Yeah, the extra that went and broke his window. Wait, I'm just kidding.
But a lot of that kind of stuff like puts a lot of things in perspective for me. And so like, yeah, there was never just an instance where I was just like, no, I'm amazing at doing things because of that one thing. It's like, no, like, it takes time. Like even like I think probably a decade from now, I might be really good at being much more responsible with my time and my work, right? But I would have had all that time to learn and grow and understand all the intricacies of my weaknesses and strengths, and really kind of profoundly focus on them to either snipe them out or to boost them up, you know? And so, and I kind of see that in my children, for instance. Like I can see that as I look at my children, like my youngest, for instance, is like the most well-behaved, and it might be easy to say that he just has good character, or it could be another variable that I've just gotten better as a parent, right? Because when I had my stepkids, like that was the first time I never raised children in my life. And then I had my daughter, and that was my first time ever having a baby, you know? And then I had my son, that's like, you know, I've had some experience, some practice by that time, you know? And so even holding my newborn, again, I have a lot of practice. I have I know a pattern in my own babies how to usually calm them down. You know, I didn't have that with my daughter, so there was always like tons and tons of sleepless nights. Not to say that this little dude is a calm little individual. And he's like, yeah, see, but it just goes to show that like, yeah, time comes practice, right? And so, yeah, I kind of like pay attention to a lot of that, and I think it's important that you do too. You pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to the things you know about you. You know yourself better than anyone else. And if you're lucky enough, like me, to have someone like my wife who's seen all the terrible mistakes I've made, and she can call me out on them all the time, right? And it's nice because she's been there from the beginning. You know, it's easier to kind of pull this trick over someone else's face that just never met you, and they just see you as you are now, right? It's harder to do it to someone like that's known you your whole life, right? And they know that you were just kind of a screw up early on, or you made up a lot of these mistakes, or you make bad choices, you know? And they can be like, yeah, remember that one time? Like, when will you learn? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know, it's much easier. That's why I keep people like that around me really often. I have lots.
People that keep you in check?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the biggest lessons I'm trying to teach my oldest son. Mm-hmm. I'm like, look, man, like, because one of his friends in high school, there's like one of his friends that came to visit him out of all the friends he thought he had during his car accident, right? And I said, that kid's special, dude. Like, you gotta like hang out with that kid way more. And he didn't at first, right? But now he hangs out with him all the time, and he feels way better about his life. He feels much more positive. And I'm like, yeah, duh.
Because that's the real friend.
Yeah, I was like, duh, because like that kid's awesome, right? And he's starting to recognize that. And that kid happens to associate himself with other awesome people, you know? So then he's making friends with his friends, and they're like, he's enjoying his time with them more and more. And I'm like, yeah, man, like you found what I was explaining. I try to kind of keep you awake to that earlier. And I was just telling them, and I tell this to my students too, like, make your own mistakes. Don't make the same that I made. That's the whole point of like passing off legacy, you know, is that I made these mistakes. I made these problems. You don't have to. Just trust my insight. Trust my hindsight. But sometimes you can't, like, no matter how much you explain and how much insight you try to give somebody, sometimes it is important for them to just kind of fall on their own, right? And so it was nice to see him kind of turn a leaf, and I'm really proud of him for that. And so, but like I said, like all this stuff it's a gradual, it's gradation. I think a lot of societal and movies and all this type of stuff informs the opposite, right? It paints this bigger, badder picture of like what things are and how they should be, and it's just not reality. Like humans are notoriously short-sighted, and that's the problem that I started to discover in myself, and the pattern I see in others, right? And so you have to pay attention to that. Have a little bit more hindsight. Try to be more long-sighted, not short-sighted. And so, yeah, pay attention to step by step, problem by problem. And like I said, build a case against yourself. You know, like if you're a complete stranger, what would you think about yourself if that stranger knew everything they knew about you? You know?
It's a good habit to have. I do that stuff.
Whatever, little dude. Yeah, he's not having it.
So you kind of put a lot of, great wisdom in keeping yourself in check and being around people that would keep you in check. So to contrast that, I want to mention something that I heard, I believe Casey say in that interview with Philip Franco. He mentioned, I believe there was this time where there was some guy going to Kanye West's house. It was like an interview or something, and upstairs there was this big, like gigantic picture of Kanye. And the interviewer was like, Kanye West, why do you have a giant picture of yourself in your house? And Kanye said, because I was the first person to believe in myself.
Oh yeah.
And that right there is some real wisdom. I like that a lot. I mean, Kanye does a lot of dumb stuff. He's a little eccentric, but that's, some good motivational, words right there. You got to be your biggest fan. You got to be your biggest supporter.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to believe in yourself, right?
Yeah, you should be the. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Like you got to have some.
You got to keep yourself in check, but you also need to be, the one that believes in yourself the most.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to paint this any further, and I don't know if I was going to do a demo for programming. I'm starting to realize that probably if I'm going to stream again and again, I should do it during the day, where it's a little bit easier. The baby's a little bit more chill, and the wife isn't entirely super exhausted. But I'm glad that I at least did one.
It's a pretty long stream. Pretty good stream. Good conversation.
Yeah, totally. Like I just like to paint and talk. It's something nice. But at least I got something going. And so just to talk a little bit about that programming stuff. Like I made an app where I've been creating these tools, and I'm trying to develop tools to allow people to stay creative. And like what I did is built this tool where it creates a focal point, a secondary point of interest, and a tertiary point of interest. And the object of it is to try to stay on those 3 points if you can, as best you can. And so I can't turn on the layer right now because both my hands are occupied. But I've been learning coding. I wanted to show some. Maybe I'll have to do it tomorrow. I'll show some tomorrow, like how I've been learning and how I think anybody else can learn and how they should and why they should. Because it's actually pretty enlightening and very empowering. And so, especially for some people like us who work in the digital world, it is useful to know why your tools might break on you. You know, and have like more of like a profound insight to why that's true, right? So that way you won't be so you'll be a little bit more cautious about what you can get out of your tools, right? Because you'll have a little bit more of an understanding. So for instance, one of the biggest epiphanies that I've had with like learning code is that, you know, the different languages and all that stuff, like you hear things like C++, JavaScript, C#, Python, Ruby, etc., etc. Right? There's many languages out there, and they all basically just take this abstract syntax and they send that and compile it to a machine, and then that machine looks at the information and it reads it in a very simple binary way. Like it takes really complicated languages. Well, it's not complicated potentially when you're writing it, but it's complicated for the machine. The machine doesn't understand like full words and sentences, right? It just understands ones and zeros. And so when you bring it down to that level, you know, the machine has to try to figure out what you're trying to get at. And so what became clear to me was that like programming is a very creative tool. It's actually super creative. Okay, and I think John Romero said it best, the guy who like helped spawn the world of FPSs, right, first-person shooters. He said it like, you know, logic is the tool for programming. Like programming is really creative, but the tool in the trade is logic, and it's beautiful because he's right. And a lot of what that means to me, the epiphany that kind of came to my mind was that, like when I'm using Photoshop, it's someone's like interpretation of what a photo manipulating software should do, right? It's not like hard code. Like it's not like a perfect equation, if that makes sense. So that means it does have flaws because a human made it, right? And so sometimes when people use their tools, they kind of imagine that it's not like it's flawless. Like why does it have bugs? You know? And it's like because that person just didn't write the code appropriately. Or why didn't they add this feature? Like every other software has this feature. Well, maybe because the foundation of their code would capsize everything to implement something that seems simple, right? Like adding folders in ZBrush, right? Like some sort of file organization, you know? It potentially might destroy everything in the foundational aspect, right? Adding a gizmo, people were losing their minds when a gizmo was added to ZBrush. But you have to understand, ZBrush wasn't a true 3D software, right? It was like fake 3D. And if you understand that, then you can understand why something like such a simple feature that is found in every single 3D program that exists, you know, you can understand why they might have had a little bit of a heartache with it, you know? And so this type of stuff just becomes way more apparent. And then when you start to see that more and more clearly, then you can start developing a more educated appreciation and empathy for the tools that you use, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like crying over Photoshop and why they don't have like the love that they deserve type of thing. No, I get it. They're like they're a multi-million-dollar company. They can definitely afford to probably restructure some of their code, you know. But some of these smaller studios, maybe not so much. And I see ZBrush as like kind of a smaller group of people, right? I don't think that they're not like this mega corporation, okay? And so it's important to understand that. And so I've been like a big fan of this, and I've been like trying to pay attention to kind of like the history of it, and because that type of information is very valuable. And so yeah, as I discovered, like programming is a very, very creative place, right? You're constantly trying to solve problems. But the difference with programming's creative sensibilities is that the problems that you solve can have these like really rewarding solutions. You know what I mean? Very like there's something powerful about not knowing how to make something do a thing that you want it to do, right? Like I want to make this thing move, and you don't know how to do it. You could be spending all your day trying to figure it out. Nothing makes sense, right? And then you think about it, and you think about it, and then you go back, you research, and then you try it, and then voila, it moves exactly the way that you wanted it to move. It may be simple, it might not even be fun or engaging, but it does what you wanted it to do, the way that you felt it should do it, you know? And you understand why, you understand how, you know? That is like super, super validating, okay? With art, you don't get that so often. Okay, art's much, much more subtle, right? Like, in a blink of an eye, like 10 years will go by, and you're like, oh, yeah, I totally feel validated now. But it took like 10 years. You know, you don't realize it, but it's like such a small incremental change, and it's not really easy to spot. Programming is like, you got like, if you wanted something to turn off and you couldn't figure out how to turn it off, and then you figured it out, like it's immediate, you know? Like it's like playing Dark Souls and beating a boss that you had a hard time fighting. It's very gamified, if that makes sense, and it's super challenging, but in all the right ways.
What
you know?
is it? Would you call it like a linear success? Because
yeah, totally
isn't a linear success.
Yes, yeah,
There's
that's
a lot
great.
of curves.
Yeah, that's a great like the linear success is a great way of saying that. I like that. And like, because I always explain to people, even when I teach them about like painting and stuff, I was like, don't think of it as like a linear path, think of it as a web. And when you're asking me to do is like give you one piece of the web, when you have to actually travel other parts of the web first for this to even make sense to you, you know? And so like I can give, like I would give pieces of advice to people in art, and they would be like tell me what you did, and I'll tell them like this is a pretty good tool, and then they'll try it and they won't understand it because they're not prepared for it. If that makes sense. And so, and there's truth to that with programming too, but it's not as organic that you would find in like something like art.
So I got another question about that. So
okay,
on when it comes to like this linear success, like you're saying moving a thing, right? Say you're trying to move from point A to point B and do something in between, like a flip, I don't know, right? On your character. Do you think that after you successfully complete that task and you figured it out and did all the things you said, you feel like that also opens up more doors for ideas and potential ways to do other things? Because
yeah, of course.
To compare it, yeah, exactly. So to compare it to skateboarding, it's like when you learn how to ollie, it opens up avenues for other tricks.
You can then begin to learn the kick flip and heel flip and etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Like when you learn how to varial, it's like, oh, if I just kick the board a little harder, then it does a tray flip.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know how to tray flip. Maybe if I can learn how to turn my body in 180, then I can do a big flip. And
yes,
it just
sir.
compounds from there.
Yes, sir. Now, I believe the same thing is true about, I actually believe all things are kind of linear. I believe everything is like, when we're the more we're talking about this, I believe a lot of things are like based off of linear success. It's just that some things are, it's a little bit, it's hidden.
It's harder to focus on.
Yeah, it's a little bit more hidden in other things. But at the end of the day, I think everything is linear, right? Like art is it's very hard to determine because of how many variables that are involved. But it is true that if you don't know your anatomy, you're gonna have a harder time doing character, you know. And there's a very linear path to learn anatomy, you know what I mean? And there's a very linear path to learn proportions, perspective, forms, design, etc. It's just that it's because it's subjective. A lot of the times, that's what makes it a little bit. That's what makes it a little bit more fuzzy. Like, because although I may draw like robots a certain way, you might not like my robots, but it doesn't mean that they're bad.
That's a good point.
Right? And so, but there is a path to draw robots.
Right or wrong.
Yeah, when you're coding, there's no right or wrong. Like then, there isn't right or wrong? There isn't. Yeah, there is right and wrong. I'm sorry. Where it's not is like game design, right? So you can make a thing move, but it doesn't mean that it's any good. If that makes sense, right? Like you can design something in a game mechanic and gameplay, and you can make it work exactly the way that you anticipated. But when you put it in someone else's hands, maybe it's not intuitive, maybe they don't understand, maybe it's too difficult to manage to someone else. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for them, right? And so, like, what's rewarding about coding is that when you want something to do a thing, you can get that feedback immediately. But when it comes to making sure that it's actually engaging or worth people's time, that's a whole different story.
That's when design comes in, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets complicated. So I think in the same parallel I found in art, right? Painting is that thing, like in coding, like learning how to code is like similar to painting. Like learning how to paint is very like linear, I believe. Right? Like if I didn't know how to paint metal, but I spent some time and now I can start painting metal, like when I figure it out, I think there is some similar there's some parallels there, right? But then when it comes to what it is that I'm painting, that's where it gets a little bit more fuzzy, right? And I think the same is true about what it is that I'm trying to code, like what it is that I'm trying to do. And that's why it's fun and creative, because it's like I'll make a thing do a thing, and I'm like, okay, I got it to do it, but this is kind of crappy, And so then I'm like, all right. And then I try to make some changes, but then the changes potentially, like the way that I wrote the code, potentially is like really destructive, if that makes sense. Like if I were to make any changes, it would destroy everything. And that's where I was saying to you guys earlier, the sympathy I started to have for software engineers is starting to grow, because I'm starting to understand, that perhaps when they were writing this code in college, you know what I mean? It just happened to be written this way, and it just took off. And so they have a harder time potentially making updates or changing things immediately, right? Because they hardwired it a little bit backwards. They got it to work, but they didn't design an opportunity to upgrade it and update it. Some software engineers or app creators are smarter than that. Like for instance, the guys who made Crossy Road, like they knew that there might be some success here, so they developed it in a way where they can add new content rapidly, right? And so when the game did kick off and it made like $3 million in like 3 months or something crazy, they're just like, okay, like we can now add tons of content like in a day, like because they had all the tools they needed. They built the game and engine in a way where it's easy to implement new assets. The person who coded it also was the person who can make the art, right? So they had that advantage of like he can put things in himself. He doesn't have to wait for someone else to do it for him, right? And so like they would like have people on Twitter be like, oh, you should make something like this because some YouTuber said something about it, and then the next day it would be in. It would be that simple, right? And so that's why that game like just took off. Same thing with like Minecraft. Like Notch knew it from the insides and out. He developed it to be completely rewritable and adjustable and fluid and dynamic, so that way it can organically grow with the tide of success. An example of the opposite would be like something like No Man's Sky. Potentially, they didn't design it in a way where they could add a lot of new content aggressively or intuitively. They designed it to be, procedurally like epic in terms of content, but that procedural turns out to be very boring, right? And that code and that language or whatever they did might make it very difficult for them to add whole new chapters and pieces to their content. Does it make sense? And so I'm starting to understand that because I'm writing like a code, like for instance, like 10-second game. Like I was trying to be proactive about like level creation because I know this stuff already from my own experience working in game development. But I still too was making mistakes. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, my code's like all ass backwards because like I want to make this major change, but I just realized that would require me to kind of potentially rewrite the whole code, and I actually plan on doing that, you know, because it'll just teach me how to do it and just be smarter next time, right? And so, but it was kind of like a really profound moment, and I think it's important that I do this and master this, because when I do master this type of stuff, what will allow me to do is to focus it on the other aspect of the stuff that we were talking about is more fuzzy. Like, is the project I'm making any good? You know, like nobody, like, although I'm getting this profound appreciation and empathy for software engineers, right? And game developers and game programmers, I'm wise enough to know that general audiences or people who play or engage in your content can care less. You know, like they don't know what's going on under the hood, and they don't. Some of them don't even care, right? They just want it to work, and why doesn't it work? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not impressed that you know how to make things move. Like you might have had that moment where you're just like, oh my god, I went from not knowing how to do anything to now making something do a thing. You know, that's really rewarding, sure. But in the grand scope of like the end product, nobody cares, right? And I know that very, very well. And so I'm just like, okay, I need to get to the place where I can just code and code in a way that's like non-destructive, so that way I can completely rewrite it and add features and make it so that someone else can come in and read what I'm writing. And that's what I'm starting to really learn too. Is it's not so much about learning how every word and definition and everything that's available for me to understand. What I need to know is how to read the language, because that will allow me to take other people's code, and we were talking about this earlier, like where I can just copy paste other people's code, like for like a calculator, but dismantle it and redesign it to serve the purposes that I need it for.
So are we talking like learn common practices, anything like that?
Yeah, like learn a good example. Let me think of a good example. A good example would be like we were saying, like learning the ollie, learning the kickflip. Like you didn't invent these things, right? Someone else did, and so you're just learning them. But what you can probably do is find a way to combine a kickflip with another move that nobody has ever thought about, right? But you have to at least
understand new tricks all the time.
Yeah, so you have to understand at least the fundamentals of the tricks and the tricks that already exist. Like you don't have to invent the kickflip first. You already know it exists.
Yeah.
People already know how to do it. But maybe what you can do is you learned how to like you're the person who discovered how to kickflip into a nose grind, right? Like like somebody did a nose grind and somebody did a kickflip, and then someone else is just like, what if you do a kickflip into a nose grind? And then that's the new trick, right? And so
blow people's minds.
Yeah, and blow people's minds, you know? And so Rodney Mullins was that kind of guy, right? Like he was the guy that
definitely.
He was like, he's like, this is a cool trick and this is a cool trick. What if you put them together? And then he would do that and people would be like, what in the world? He can do that? And he was like, yeah, I just keep putting things together. And then he got to the point where he was at the end of what was already created, and he just started creating crazy stuff because of just being on the edge of like skate knowledge. You know what I mean?
What else can be done?
Yeah, and so you think about like someone like Bill Gates. Like he didn't design half of the stuff that he did with like a Windows. He just happened to be able to read it, understand it, decipher it, and create a much more affordable alternative to Apple's iOS. You know, and that's why people always that's why Steve Jobs felt like he stole it from him. But the reality is like, no, he didn't steal it. He just repurposed it and restructured it. It's like remixing it, you know, and I start to understand that because Bill Gates is not a stupid guy. He understands he could read code, and he was able to kind of create a platform that was much more approachable, and so affordable, not approachable, because Windows was always still really difficult, especially in the early ages. Apple was always much more approachable. It just was more expensive, right? It still is, And so, like, yeah, I think it's really powerful, and I think people should do it. Yeah, my baby's passed out now. I did a good job, but my wife left. She went to the, so I had to hold him. So sorry for anybody who was like wondering if the stream froze. I'm just talking with Mike and just trying to spread some information. I've been holding my baby this whole time. If you rewatch the stream, you'd see that I started painting, and then you hear a baby crying for its life, and so, but now he's passed out and he's in my arms, being a beautiful little child. And my arms are going numb, so I'm sitting down now. Oh, no, you're all right. You're all right. Dreaming about falling? You're okay. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the message I want to kind of end with, actually, too. I'm sure there's more questions, but to be honest, I probably should get going. I have other stuff I need to get done.
It's fine. I got to take my mom to the doctor tomorrow anyway. So.
Nope, not important.
Oh. I have life too.
Nope. You're the back. I'm
the backdrop too. Okay.
Yeah, you're the backdrop character. You're a secondary character to my story. So after we're done with the stream, you vanish into oblivion until I call upon you. Yeah. But I actually encourage people to learn some coding. And if I had to give you guys a suggestion on which code language you should try to learn, you guys should learn web languages. I think web is truly going to take off in the next decade. And not to say that web hasn't taken off. I'm saying that the internet and stuff is like right now, if we were to put an age on the internet, like how old the maturity of it is, in the web, it's like a kid starting college. You understand? Like fresh, the world is still dope, making stupid choices here and there still, right? Drinking for the first time, these types of things, right? But eventually, the kid's to leave and become established and start to mature, right? And become someone that has more responsibilities or even a career going and be in their 30s, And when the internet gets to that stage, it's going to be insane. It's going to be very, very insane. The world's going to be a dramatically different place. And if you want to be a part, if you want to be a part of that somehow, some way, you better start learning the language that it speaks. And right now, JavaScript specifically, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript specifically, and uniformly are accepted around the world, which is really that's very rare. I think the other languages that do that are like some of the ones we mentioned earlier, but like JavaScript, like there is no, as far as what I've seen, there is branches and like APIs and libraries that are all evolve from JavaScript, right? But JavaScript is like the code language of the web, that and HTML and CSS. Okay. HTML, the way you should think about this is HTML is like the frame that holds all this ish together. CSS is how it makes it how it looks, like this is how it should look, and then JavaScript is like how it works. Okay. And so like all these interactive websites that you might see that have all this really fancy stuff, there's a lot of JavaScript doing that, and
can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, what's up, man?
You can also look into SQL because going from what you're saying and from my experience in IT, like SQL is sort of like the backbone of the internet.
What does it do specifically? Because I know there's PHP, but then that started to get phased out.
It's basically the database of the internet.
Got it.
Yeah, it's like everything is hinged on that. Like your Xbox account, your Microsoft account, everything is hinged on like SQL database.
Yeah, so there's another facet that I think I'm missing, and I think you're mentioning it now, right? Like there's XML, I believe, is another thing. Like there's like the storage aspect. So HTML is where it's how it's held together, right? It's the glue.
Yep.
And then CSS is how it looks. It's like the paint on top of the car. And then JavaScript's like the engine that runs the car, right? And then, but like what you're mentioning, SQL is like where all this information just lives, right? It's kind of like where it's stored. Right? I think PHP and XML are very similar in that same sense. It's like, where does all this data like live though? You know, like
Servers,
yeah,
server farms.
yeah, and so that's important information. That's actually something that I'm going to be trying to learn probably in the next game that I'm going to try to make. I'm going to try to make it multiplayer, and I'm going to have to learn how to access servers. I have to understand how to get your computer to access the same server, and then that server talking to both computers. Right? I don't know anything.
That's kind of a whole different ball game, though. That's more like network programming, AJ, and like. I think you're dealing with too much IT stuff at the same time. I think you should like kind of focus on something.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm
He's
saying.
saying slow your roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you that I actually understand that, but you have to understand that that has actually gotten much easier to manage. Like I've actually saw some tutorials that that like are like 10 minutes long, and they can make you do at least peer-to-peer multiplayer, like almost instantaneously using JavaScript. There's things called like Node.js, there's Socket.io, you know,
Right.
and
These are modular JavaScript
yeah,
codes
and
that-
so these things kind of do a lot of the brunt, like brute force. So you know how I was saying like the internet is like kind of like this kid going to college, you know, and it's only going to mature. What I mean by that is like the tools. The tools are going to become much simpler, you know, and that means more people will have access. And when more people have access and control, then they'll be able to do more crazy things. So the fact that I'm making like 3D games and 2D games in JavaScript on the web browser using an engine called Play Canvas is my point. Like I wasn't able to do this like 5 or 6 years ago. You understand? Unless I was like super knowledgeable about JavaScript and HTML code. But I don't need to be as much anymore. And so I think my next attempt of the multiplayer game is not far-fetched, but at the same point, I respect what you're trying to argue, right? I actually do respect and understand
I'm
that.
not arguing with it. I'm just letting you know, like, but yeah, you bring up a good point. It's a lot easier now to get codes
And it's only going to get easier. Yeah, it's only going to get easier.
someone else's stuff and put it in the game that you probably don't have a very deep understanding about.
Yeah, you're right.
What, like 5-6 years ago?
And let me be clear too. Like I'm very prepared to realize that it's more difficult than it might appear. And if that's the case, then I will probably just stick to single play experience until until it gets easier to do. Right?
Can't hurt to try.
Doesn't Unreal have like a multiplayer sort of engine kind of built into it that you just have to script?
It's that's what I'm trying to say. Like all these platforms do. They all. I feel like it's only like a hop, skip, jump away. It's not like it's not like a whole thing like it might have been in the past, right?
Mm.
Like there's whole services that are built around that you just plug in their API and it should just work, you know?
Right.
And it's not that simple. I know it's not already. Actually, I tried it once for like 10 minutes and it didn't work. So I was like, all right, well, I'll come back to this later. I was like, maybe first I just need to learn how to make a thing, do a thing, before I try to go hardcore parkour on this, you know? And so
Right.
that's why I said maybe on my third game. But even then, I might actually hold off. I might do it like on my fourth or fifth attempt when I actually feel really confident with coding and understand kind of the language and understand why it might not be working. Because right now, when I first started, I had no idea. Like I could see all these words, and like they were like sending me error messages, and I couldn't read it or understand the error messages.
Yeah.
But
Those are
now I'm starting to actually be able to read that stuff. That's what I'm saying. I was basically got to the point where I could read the source code of my Squarespace website and like hand pick elements and change them by hand. I wasn't able to do that like a month or two ago, you know? But now I can. Like I can like totally read it. I understand what it's being like in all that crazy language. Like if you guys have Chrome open, just do Control-Shift-J and you open up the console log, yeah. Or if you right-click on anything on a website and just hit inspect, it'll give you like all this source code, right? I can read that now.
I get a panic attack.
Yeah, you probably, if you're looking at it right now, you're like,
yeah.
what in the world? You know,
Yeah.
I can actually read it. And that's crazy because I couldn't before. And that's my point. Like, I got like books on this. I've been watching video tutorials. As you can tell, I've been holding my baby a lot. And when I hold my baby, I like watch YouTube videos and read articles because I can do that. I try to manage my time. I need to change him, and I need to get going. He's starting to get pissed. But anyways, yeah, good talking with you guys. Sorry I wasn't able to kind of demo or answer too many questions. I appreciate you guys who stuck around though. Peace out, friends. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn this stuff out. Oi. He's fighting me, man. All right, laters, guys.